Hi, I'm Sejal, and I worked with Sam for my round one MBA applications. And I got accepted to University of Virginia Darden, University of Michigan Ross, and NYU with a 170K scholarship.
Hi, Sejal. Thank you very much for joining me today. Can you please start by telling me a little bit about your background, a little bit about your profile for your MBA applications?
Yeah, so I guess my background, I took the GMAT a year ago and I scored a 710. And in terms of work experience, I currently work at PwC. I'm in our tax technology specialty group. So we build out applications for accountants to use. So kind of like TurboTax, but for specific type of tax.
Why did you decide you wanted to do an MBA?
So I've worked in tax or tech and finance and accounting for over 3 years now. That's what I majored in undergrad as well. So I have a bachelor's and a double major in finance and information technology and systems. So my role at PwC is like very aligned with what I majored in. And I really enjoyed it, but I feel like I've like learned a lot there. And now I want to pivot into something different. And I really enjoy like change management and organizational level change. I got to do a little bit of that at PwC within my like team and like smaller group in our organization. So that's kind of what led me to like pursue an MBA and like pivot into management consulting later on.
Okay, excellent. And so you touched on the schools that you got admitted to. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose those particular schools?
Yeah, so NYU was definitely one of my top choices. I live in Dallas, Texas right now, and I visited New York City like a few times. I really love like the city vibes and just in general, like NYU is like a top 10 school. And so it was one of my like top choices for MBA programs. And also one of the other things is that I'm really, I guess, I'm a part of like UNICEF and like I was very involved in college and also after college as well. And like when I was researching schools, NYU has a lot of ties with like the United Nations and UNICEF since they're all headquartered in New York City. So I had a conversation with like admissions and students about that, and they had great things to say about like those programs. So that was one of my reasons it was like a top choice.
Yeah. And you managed to get that UNICEF piece across in the essays. You said it came up in the interviews as well.
Yeah. So for my NYU interview, like yes, it was a part of my essays because NYU is one of their like essays that a lot of people know about is like the Pick Six. And so for that, one of the pictures that I used was a picture of me holding like a UNICEF sign in front of like the Capitol building in Washington, DC. Because we like when I was in college, we went to Washington, DC and advocated for UNICEF. And like eliminating child poverty. And so that was one of my like pick six essays. And it was like it came up in the interview, like it was the first question because it was like an icebreaker question for the interview. So I like briefly touched upon it there. And also while going through the questions that the interview was asking, like, why do you want to get an MBA? Like, what do you want to do in the future? I talked a lot about how I want to eventually like pivot into UNICEF, and it just naturally like came up with like what I want to do in the future.
Yeah. And so here, the lesson is a big part of creating an MBA profile. You have lots of different aspects of your profile, but getting that narrative across and talking about it consistently across the essays, the pick six, as you say, the interview this kept coming out in the same way, and it helps the adcom to put you in a certain box, and gives them something to associate with you. In this case, your UNICEF girl, which has obviously worked out in your favor. It's really, really nice. So can you talk a little bit about the timeline? You applied in round one, right? Can you talk
Yes.
about when you decided to do, when you decided you wanted to do an MBA, and when we met, and sort of how long the process took?
Yeah. So I feel like I started the whole thing like 1.5 years ago. I guess like the pandemic had just started and I had like more free time. And I'd always like thought about wanting to get an MBA, because I kind of like going to school. And I like missed that like college experience, and also was just what I wanted to like pivot into post MBA. Having an MBA would be really helpful for that. So I did like a lot of research a year or so ago, and after that, I started studying for the GMAT, so that I wouldn't have to like worry about that as much, like during like the MBA application process. And then once I'd like taken a few attempts of the GMAT and was done with that, I started looking into MBA consultants. And so I talked to a few, and obviously you were one of them. And I think I had a lot of those like initial like 30-minute like free calls with like a few consultants. And out of all of them, I really like vibed with you, and really enjoyed like our conversation. And I feel like just the conversation we had, it was very like real, um, but like nice at the same time, which I think is really important to me. Like if I'm going through like the MBA application process, I want someone who will like give me an honest opinion, and tell me on things that I need to improve on, but also things that are good. And so I got that from you. And so I decided to go with you as my consultant. And after that, I think from there, it was just like a lot of like our like calls. And then like we had time, I guess, before like application deadlines, like a few months to like really talk through like my story, and then start putting together like essays. And I feel like it was all within like good time. Like it wasn't like rushed or anything. And so when I was like submitting applications, it was like very stress free,
That's nice.
kind of.
Well, you're making me blush. So you talk about the process as if it was, it was all very smooth. And in terms of timing, it was smooth. But you were
Yeah.
still working at the same time, weren't you? Can you talk about some of the stresses that you faced and some of the emotional ups and downs that you went through, and all applicants go through?
Yeah, I think it was definitely stressful, like working and applying to colleges at the same time. I think for me, I like compared the experience to undergrad, where, you just apply to like as many colleges as you want, and like, maybe like visit a few of the schools. But I feel like with MBA applications, it's pretty different. And because there's a lot of like trying to connect with like students, talking to different students, admitting like student or attending student events. And so there's a lot that goes into it. And I think that was just very difficult to manage along with like working full time, because I always had like a lot of deadlines, a lot of calls. I was working with a team that was just very demanding. And so managing all of that was definitely stressful. Like I know I like missed an event or two sometimes because I was just so busy on like calls, and and I was always worried that it would like affect my application. I actually missed an NYU event, and I mean clearly it worked out, but it was just stressful overall.
Yeah, you're juggling quite a lot of different things at the same time.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So, if you had any advice for people who are thinking, I'm thinking about maybe doing an MBA, I'm thinking about maybe hiring a consultant, I'm perhaps overwhelmed by the GMAT and the prospect of all of that, what advice would you have for people who are considering, diving into this process?
Yeah, for GMAT, I would say start as like early as you can. Like if you are sure you want to get an MBA, definitely start that process earlier so that you're not as stressed out when it comes to like writing your story or finding a consultant or just going through like applications. Um, and there's a lot of forums online to like help with like GMAT studying. There's a lot of different like sources for like prep. Um, I think advice for, I guess, going just through the whole MBA process, like I would say don't like try not to stress out. I know it's easier said than done because I was definitely very stressed out myself. But like looking back now, like everything will work out. I think just like try as much as you can, like definitely put in all of your effort in like creating your story, like working with your consultant if you have one, and just like putting all of the effort that you can, like attending events, managing your recommenders, those kinds of things, and just give it your all. And then after that, like honestly, it's just like a waiting period until you like hear back.
Fantastic. So last question then from me is, what are you most looking forward to in New York?
Um, I I don't know if I have an answer to that. Like I am so excited about everything. Like there's just so many things that I want to do. There's like definitely some of the touristy things. Like I've always loved Times Square. Like I know it's a very like touristy thing to do, but it's one of my like favorite places to visit. Like it just feels like you're in a totally different world. I'm excited to I'm just excited to like look around and see all of these like really tall buildings around me. And also just like the MBA program, like I'm excited to like meet the rest of my cohort. I actually like had a admitted students event earlier, and like it was so cool to like see people from like so many different like backgrounds and countries. And it's just I feel like I don't really get that as much like where I live or at work. And so being able to like have that in an MBA program where I'm gonna like have classmates who are from like South America or like Europe is just really exciting.
Yeah, I can absolutely love it. Fantastic. Look, Sejal, thank you very much for taking the time to speak about your experience. And one last thing before we finish up, as is becoming a bit of a tradition, can I get a high five?
High five.
Yeah. Sejal, best of luck in New York. Hope everything goes well. And thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you.
Thank you. My mom has basically told the whole world that I got into NYU. And like, I need there to be an element of surprise. Like, one day I'm going to show up in New York City and I'm going to post on my Instagram story and be like, this is my new home. And people are going to be like, wait, what? And I'm gonna be like, yeah, that's right.